Hey Brian, hopefully this works better since you're able to view a YouTube whenever your internet seems to be working, and then you can just email me with any questions. Let me check, make sure that's not you emailing me back. Okay, it is, but you're saying that that's okay. So let me go back to, student version. So here are your results. So just to kind of talk you through the results for the IDI. So this is confidential. I have a copy of the results and you have a copy of the results and nobody else gets them. It's called the Intercultural Competency Development Inventory, but really it goes beyond country, culture, or ethnicity to also apply to any of the types of diversity that we've been talking about in the class. So being able to recognize, and this is my definition, recognize cultural differences and similarities, recognize that every group, every culture has some positives and some negatives, so no one group is always better than another group. So it's kind of the recognition and awareness, as well as eventually being able to adapt your behavior to those different cultural situations. So my dog is sitting next to me and wanting pet right now, so I'm using one hand to pet him, and then I'm also trying to focus on you because I don't want him to ring the bell to want to go out. So we usually start out with a question: can you tell me a bit about your experiences with cultural differences and similarities? But you've written about that, so we don't really need to do that anyhow at this point. So you watched the video, you saw the continuum. So we have people in the class that are along all stages of the continuum. Mostly the people at the lower ends have not had much interaction with people who are different. And the one or two people that are at adaptation or almost to adaptation, I think my dog's going to bark now, sorry, are ones that are people that have to use this in their day-to-day lives as part of their job. So people who have to make sure that they're adapting, recognizing cultural differences and adapting to them as part of their job. And they're usually people that have been around longer. So younger people tend to be lower down, and as we get older, we have experiences that take us to the top. So my kind of shortcut: denial is somebody who doesn't even recognize that there are differences unless someone's speaking a different language. Polarization: people tend to think that one group has to be better than the other. It's either my group's better than that group or the other group's better than my group. The idea that they both can't be good or they both can't be bad, that one's got to be better than the other. Minimization is where 65% of the population that's taken this, fall. So this is emphasizing things that we have in common, trying to downplay the differences, and this is where I fell when I first took this assessment. Hopefully I'm moving along a little bit as I'm going through the class for the second time now. Acceptance is the point where, in my mind and where I am, is when you recognize that differences can be good. So we're similar in some ways, we're different in some ways, and those differences can actually help us and be valuable and be important parts of the people that I'm interacting with and that I'm developing relationships with. Adaptation, then, is the people who are able to recognize the differences in the cultures and then be able to adapt their behavior. So everybody gets two basic scores. The perceived orientation is just what it says, your perception of where you are on the continuum, or where you would like people to perceive you on the continuum. And usually think about this as like an ideal self, kind of a goal or an ideal. Developmental orientation is where the assessment puts you as you answered the question. So it's kind of where you are and where you want to be. There's the difference in between is the gap. Everybody has a gap. Everybody perceives that they are higher than they are, so everybody has an overconfidence gap. And then the leading orientation is just what's the next stage along the continuum. So your perceived orientation, and this is what mine looks like, not the exact numbers, but where your perceived orientation is acceptance moving toward adaptation. So accepting that there are similarities and differences, that all cultures have some good and some bad, and being interested in learning more about those. And then the development orientation is showing at minimization, which again is the most popular. So people in this group tend to focus on what we have in common and downplay the differences. If you meet someone and you don't know where they are along the continuum, in general of the people who would be taking this, so I'm not sure exactly how it plays out in the military, you might assume that they're at this stage. So trying to minimize differences. Again, there's a gap. Everybody has a gap. Everybody overestimates. So there's a page on that. And then here's where we go over some of the specific characteristics of each of the stages on the continuum to see if you think this is a fit with you or for you. Does this look like you? So normally I would read through each one of these and then ask if it sounds like you. So does not view differences as a threat, tries to avoid stereotyping and biased behavior, interested in differences but limited in ability to adapt, recognizes the essential humanity of every person, tries to act in tolerant ways, may not be fully aware of how our own behaviors and ideas are culturally grounded, tends to assume people from other cultures are basically like us, and minimizes the importance of cultural differences, and then finally may be used as a coping strategy by non-dominant members. So I am a female in a male-dominated military institution. I don't have any military background. So when I'm with a larger group, especially in the School of Business, I try to minimize the way I'm different and emphasize, we all want students to succeed. We all want to be good teachers and effective researchers and support the organization. So that's one example of what that might look like. So people who are non-dominant members sometimes have to work hard to make it look like they fit in. So every one of these stages along the continuum has some strengths and some opportunities. And then the last page is just showing, going along the continuum, what's your next step. The education example is because we're using the education version, but use the video as examples of what these look like in an organization. So every profile comes with a plan, and everybody's plan looks the same up to a certain point. So talks about what is a plan, why would you have one, and since everybody in this class, we've been working on this for 6 weeks, so we'll assume you know that. Everybody has the same list of learning opportunities, so training programs, activities at work, classes you're all in right now, people you interact with from different cultures, or just people who are different from you would be learning opportunities. You could go see a film or go to the theater, read books about some specific culture or difference, that you're trying to learn about. You're all doing journals as a part of this class, travel, obviously. That's why we're having internet connections, so you're in a different place right now, site visits. And then somebody talked about podcasts. So if there's a specific culture or group you want to learn more about, you could probably find a podcast on it. So for the final paper, which is the assignment for next week, I'm asking everybody to do a couple of these items in the plan. So one is for everybody to do number 1, which is kind of a background, kind of setting the stage for why would you do any of these activities and try to move along the continuum. So fill out the questions in 1.0, and these are just basic reflection questions that you may have already talked about in this class. I'm going to ask everybody to do number 2, which is to set some specific goals to help you choose activities, basically. What what are some areas that you'd like to learn more about? What cultures? What different groups? What are your goals for navigating cultural differences in communities right now that you could work on for this plan? So then, I'm not going to ask everybody to do number 3. But then when we go into section 4, this is a list of different activities that will help you move along the continuum, basically. So I'm going to ask everybody to do 2 activities. So you can go in here and just choose 2 of these activities. They're mostly reflection. There's probably one that asks you to go talk to people who are different, and just different ways for you to reflect on these topics. So you can choose 2 from this list. So, and these are a little bit different depending on the results for your actual orientation. So there's one, mostly reflection. This one's an internet search. Do other searches. Deepen your understanding of your own culture is 3. 4 is understanding other groups. 5 is clarify differences between organizational culture and other kinds of culture. 6 is go talk to somebody who's different. So you get the idea. So these you can just type into this document and then cut and paste or copy and paste and put them into the final paper, or you can just type the questions into the document that you're submitting for the final paper. So everybody's going to do 1, which is kind of a background, 2, set a couple goals, and then pick 2 activities from 4. Or if you have an opportunity, especially where you are now, to do a different activity that would help you learn more about a different culture, then go ahead and substitute that, just so you're doing 2 activities. And then if you pick something else, just describe it and how it might apply to this kind of situation. So hopefully this is helpful. Please feel free to email me any questions you might have, and I'll look forward to reading what you come up with.